They say that friendships are important at any age. But what if letting them go after 60 is the real key to peace and fulfillment? As we age, our priorities change and the things we once pursued, like large social circles and constant connection, start to feel less important. The truth is that you don't actually need friends after 60, not in the way that society suggests. Instead, choosing independence over duty and stillness over social noise can lead to a deeper kind of happiness that comes from within. In this video, we'll look at 6 compelling reasons why friendships might not be necessary. Since the last reason we'll discuss may forever alter your perspective on aging and yourself, let's start with the idea that you no longer need to prove yourself to anyone. For the majority of your life, you were expected to show up, impress people, and earn your place repeatedly. But now that you've outgrown that chapter, you've lived enough and loved enough. This isn't about isolation, rather it's about liberation. Given enough, you don't need to prove your value anymore, especially not through friendships that require work and sacrifice. When you were younger, you might have clung to social circles to feel accepted and like you belong, but those needs diminish with age. By the time you're in your 70s, you've established your legacy and know who you are. You don't need praise to validate your tale. Take Harold, for instance, a man who spent decades moving up the corporate ladder while surrounded by friends, clients, and coworkers. After he retired, he began attempting to stay in touch, but one day he asked himself why he was wasting time on people who never really saw him. He stopped and something unexpected happened. He felt relief. He realized that many people miss him and that you don't need friends to feel whole, because when you finally respect yourself enough to let go of things that don't serve you, you gain something far more powerful: freedom. 2. Peace becomes more valuable than socializing. There comes a time in life when peace becomes more valuable than conversation. Margaret understood this well at the age of 64. A busy calendar felt exciting, with calls to return to events you thrived on, but now something quieter, something softer, something deeper calls to you. You start to realize that not every friendship brings peace, not every phone call is worth returning, and not every gathering nourishes your soul. Coffee dates, group chats, dinner invitations, and other activities used to fill her days, but as time went on, she realized that the joy was ebbing away. Some friends continued to phone her just to talk, while others depleted her with their incessant griping. And the power of this stage of life is that you realize that fulfillment doesn't come from how many people surround you, but how calm your mind feels when they're not around. If you've been pulling away from certain friendships, don't feel guilty. You're not becoming isolated, you're becoming free. Gradually, what once felt social became exhausting, so she started saying no, not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom. She also started walking more, reading more, resting more, and most importantly, she began enjoying her alone. When you're younger, you put up with it, you justify it, you keep trying, but by the time you're in your 60s, you stop making excuses and you begin to see patterns. How many times have you reached out and been met with silence in return? At the age of 78, William had spent decades fostering friendships and commemorating birthdays with messages, checking in and gradually realizing that his efforts weren't being rewarded, that his plans were constantly on his shoulders, that calls weren't answered, that talks were one-sided, and that one day he stopped asking himself what he had done wrong and instead asked why he was still trying. At that point, he found serenity by letting go of those friendships rather than replacing them, because fewer friendships translate into lower expectations, which in turn translate into fewer disappointments. Choosing the few who genuinely care rather than clinging to the many who never did is what this implies. You owe no one your time, attention, or heart, especially not those who vanished when you needed them. It doesn't mean loneliness, rather it means clarity. When you're young, time seems limitless, with more days, opportunities, and people to spend it with. However, as you get older, your time becomes increasingly valuable. As you get older, you may have packed your calendar with commitments disguised as friendships, dinners, guilt calls, and habit gatherings you didn't enjoy. But after you turn 60, you begin to feel time differently, not as something you spend, but as something you safeguard. Now, however, every hour matters more because you know you can never get it back. Richard, who was the life of the party in his early 80s, used to be constantly on the phone and always saying yes, but eventually he realized that the conversations were draining him, the lunches were boring, and the people he met were more interested in gossip than in personal development. So one day he stopped, choosing to read a good book over forced chatter, to be quiet over forced conversation, and to find peace over pleasing others. In that silence, he found freedom because when you no longer owe time to anyone, you can finally use it for anything that makes you happy. Ask yourself, the next time someone wants to talk or invites you somewhere you don't want to go, is this how I want to spend my valuable time? Because by now you've earned the right to say no without feeling guilty, and yes only to one. One of the biggest illusions we're told is that genuine camaraderie originates from within. It's commonly believed that happiness depends on having people around us, but as you get older you realize that true peace comes from being at peace with yourself rather than from other people. You've spent decades surrounded by people in social circles, family get-togethers, and workplaces, but how much of that time was spent adjusting to please others or acting like you didn't need crowds? After 60, you need clarity. Take Eleanor. 66. For years she packed her schedule with lunches, phone calls, and visits in an effort to stay in touch and avoid feeling lonely, but she was still exhausted and unhappy until she stopped going for walks and reading books in cafes. Sat in solitude without feeling alone and came to the overwhelming realization that she was sufficient. Being your own source of happiness, discussion, and tranquility is what true companionship is all about. It's not about a friend who constantly checks in, it's about understanding your content, even when they don't. The best part is that when you love your own company, you draw in others who feel the same way and respect your pace. Letting go opens the way to a more satisfying existence, which is one of the most important things in life. If you've been worried that having fewer friends means you're missing something, realize that you are already whole, and that's the type of freedom that only time can offer you. Permission to let go of friendships that feel forced, expectations that no longer serve you, and guilt for choosing peace over people are all powerful gifts you can give yourself after you turn 60. This is because when you let go of what's weighing you down, you create room for what genuinely makes you feel better. James, who was in his late 70s, used to think that the secret to aging well was to stay social. He filled his schedule with calls, invitations, and catch-ups with people he no longer felt connected to. However, one day he stopped because he realized that he was staying busy, not because it made him happy, but because he was afraid of what would happen if he didn't. He decided to stop chasing what no longer felt meaningful, to stop showing up out of habit, and to start showing up for himself. What he discovered was a priceless freedom, the ability to spend his days in nature, to concentrate on his health, to enjoy the silence of his own company, and most importantly, the freedom to live his own terms, not those of others. Letting go doesn't mean shutting out, it means creating a life that reflects who you are today, not who you were 20 years ago. If you've been holding on to friendships out of guilt, fear, or routine, ask yourself if this is feeding your soul or just filling your perhaps because choosing peace leads to a deeper sense of contentment than company, the kind of fulfillment that comes from within, not from other people. Take a moment to think as we conclude this video. You don't need friends after the age of 60 to feel complete, happy, or fulfilled. You need peace, freedom, and a life that reflects your truth, because true joy comes from letting go, not from maintaining appearances. You've earned the right to use your time and energy however you see fit, and it's important to embrace the quiet that helps you reconnect with yourself. Which aspect of today's message resonated with you the most? Have you let go of friendships that no longer serve you? Have you found new peace in your own company? We'd love to hear your story. 6. If you liked this video and found it useful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue to create quality content to inform and inspire you. Thank you for watching, and we hope to see you in the next video. Please leave a comment below with one thing you learned today and how you plan to apply it to your life. We greatly appreciate your feedback.